Just so y'all know, I'm Marguerite Crispillo. I have been around for 30 years, closed over 4,000 transactions, and I've made way more mistakes than I've succeeded. Let's dive into today's topic. And today's topic actually ties in, ironically, that wasn't part of my plan, but it ties in to what we were talking about. And it ties into putting systems and structure in place for your business and what that looks like to hire and train a great assistant.
Let's go.
So if you think about systems and structure, the irony is that most agents got into real estate because they didn't want to have a job. So they didn't want systems and structure, right? But the systems and structure is what creates consistency in your business. Now, I will tell you that where I learned this back in probably 1996, when I went to a Joe Stump event by referral only back in the day. And at that event, he had a guy named Michael Gerber actually speaking. Michael Gerber wrote the book, The E-Myth, The Entrepreneurial Myth. I've read that book. I don't even know how many times. I have suggested it and encouraged people to read it even more times than that. It was a game changer. And kind of the gist of the book talks a little bit about McDonaldizing your business. Now, you may not love the food at McDonald's. I can't eat there myself. But the truth is, you can go to any McDonald's anywhere in the world, and the Big Mac is the same, right? Their French fries are the same. Their milkshakes are the same. And what does that allow you to do? It creates consistency for your business, meaning everyone knows if they go to McDonald's, they can get a Big Mac and the Big Mac's going to be the same. Here's the second part of it is that we're going to talk a little bit about today, is when you create a simple system and you create the system based around you and what works for you. I want to highlight that part and we'll come back to it. When you create a system that works around you and you can simplify it, then anybody can do it. What is one of the keys that McDonald's actually has? Anybody can make their burgers, from people who are challenged, handicap challenged in some way, to elderly people, to 16-year-old teenagers who've never had a job, to any skill level, right? And that means that any skill level can go in and make that Big Mac. Why? Because they have very simple systems and it's step by step. That means that you can effectively, when you build your systems right, hire people with skill levels that might not be your skill, meaning you're getting paid $200 an hour or $100 an hour, whatever. What if you could hire people that can do things at $4 or $5 an hour or $20 an hour? Now, this is not intended to say you're taking advantage of people or anything like that, but there's a reason entry-level jobs are paid at a lower rate, because they're entry-level jobs. And they are jobs that are designed to help weed people out as to who is going to rise and work and who's not. So you guys have heard me talk about my favorite quote in the world. I even had t-shirts made. You can find them on Etsy that says you get paid in direct proportion to your ability to figure stuff out, right? What does that mean? That means, again, that when you have entry-level people starting at jobs, and one of them, you go and you say, hey, I need help with this. And that person's, oh yeah, I don't know where it is. I don't have time. I got stuff to do. Versus the person you go and you say, hey, I need this. They go, oh, awesome. Let me show you where it is. Here's my favorite ones. Here's a great idea. Here's an example of what you can do. And those people will rise to management. It has happened even within my own team, my own personal team with staffing. We hired a guy in the Philippines named AJ a little over 2 years ago. And he was 19 years old, just out of school, still going to college, didn't have a ton of skill yet. That guy has literally worked his hiney off and risen in our team to, not only is he the transaction manager for our entire team, but he now runs a team of 4 virtual assistants that he's responsible for training, teaching, coaching, and helping. what that started with was teaching him a basic system that we utilize on our team and showing him what he can do to maximize and improve that. So let's talk about what this looks like. And if you guys have any questions, be sure and post them in the chat. So today we're going to talk a little bit about creating that process for your assistant. And I have a spell error there, so it should have been your, but it says creating the process for your assistant, right? What it looks like to develop a checklist, how to train your assistant, and then some things to consider. So it starts really by setting the foundation, by sharing your vision, your mission, and your process. What does the big picture look like? Like on our team, the big picture is how do we create an extraordinary experience for our clients and the agents who are associated with our team. Now, keep in mind, that's always a work in progress. Is it an extraordinary experience always? No. But again, what did I say at the beginning of the class today? You learn more from your mistakes than you learn from your successes, right? How do we learn when something happens? We're like, oh, I guess we need to put a system in place. If you were to listen to any of my admin staff, what you will hear, they will tell you that every time we have something go wrong on our team, the very first words out of my mouth are, how do we create a system so that doesn't happen again, right? How do we put something in place? The goal of our team is that any inbound calls are all either to give us a referral or give us a compliment. If somebody is complaining about something or having an issue with something, that is a red flag to put a system in place. Are we perfect at it? No, far from it. But that is a clue. So in other words, if you're having challenges on your team, or even just in your own personal production, maybe you don't even have an assistant yet, right? Then what does that look like to improve those systems? My personal opinion is when you take 100% responsibility for anything that goes wrong in any area of your life, you will work towards finding a way to fix it. But when you don't take responsibility and you blame other people, then you brush it off your plate and you don't deal with it. So that applies really to, in my opinion, to all areas of your life. And people are like, oh, but they screwed me over, or that person didn't do their job. In my checklist that I create, assume that nobody else is doing their job. I just assume that no one else is going to do their job, which means it's my responsibility and my job to explain to people what's going on, how things work, or put a system in place so that problem does not happen. Does that make sense? So let's dive into this. And these are things to think about, right? And things to actually share with your team and people that you are bringing on. Number one, always be a team player, right? Always tell the truth to customers and other coworkers. You would think I wouldn't have to explain that, but I do. If you don't understand something, ask questions, right? My fourth one, this is my one pet peeve, be on time to work. Like to me, and I've not been in the military, but if you've ever worked with people in the military, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late, right? But at the very, very minimum, you need to be on time. The next one, never, ever be impolite to a customer. Literally never. You have to smile and nod. You have to work through, find a way to fix these things, right? Now, the next one, get to know the people you work with. Get to know them, who they are. Have fun. Be open-minded. Begin with an end in mind. What does that mean? It means, what is the big picture look like? So in creating a lot of these checklists, the first thing we start with is, what do we want the client experience to look like? What do we want them to say at the end of the transaction, right? Oh my gosh, that was amazing. Or, oh, that was hell. That was the most difficult deal I've ever been. What do we want our client to experience? Put first things first, meaning you got to take care of you first, and you need to make sure that things work for you. Why do I say that? Because agents have a tendency, when they get busy, they grab the first person that walks by that's breathing, they throw them in a desk, they dump a bunch of crap on their desk, and they fly out, right? The reality is that they're not really taking the time to create a system that works around them. The problem is if you bring somebody in and you're thinking, oh my God, they're going to do it all for me. They're going to create this system for me. That all sounds amazing, right? Except what happens when they leave your team? They take the system with you. And all of a sudden, I can't tell you how many times I have agents freaking out because they lost their assistant. They don't even know how to log into the email because the assistant did all of it. And I get that, but you still have to have systems in place that protect you. See your job as cooperative, meaning it's your job to work together, right? Not a comprehensive arena where success is not achieved at the expense or inclusion of the success of others. Seek first to understand, then be understood, meaning to me, one of the greatest skills you can learn in life as a rule is the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, to be able to see through their eyes, to be able to look at what they might be experiencing in their experience with you. If you learn that, it's a game changer. Synergize, realize the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Preserve and enhance your greatest asset. Always do what you say. Treat people as you would want to be treated. Buying a house is a big deal, you guys. Treat it that way. Selling is too. Keeping in touch with management on how you feel and what your goals are. So let's talk about one of the first checklists that I have created. And yes, we have all these available. We are putting them into a package, and it will be available in the next 30 days or so. So once we have that package together, we'll have it available for any of you that are interested in getting that product. So the starting bell to celebration day, what is this? And I know it's hard for you guys to read, I'm sure, on the screen. The point is not to read every line item. Starting bell to celebration day means, what do we want the client to experience? I want you to take some time, if any of you guys can, take a little bit of time, 15, 20, 30 minutes. Write down how you want the client to experience working with you. We're talking about from the moment somebody refers them or the moment the phone rings and says, "Hi, Claudia, I was referred to you by Mark and I'm thinking about buying a home or selling my home," right? From that very first phone call, what do you want that experience to sound like and to be like? Meaning, is your plan to immediately set an appointment? Do you have a referral reward program in place? What do you want that experience to look like when you meet with them, whether that's live and in person or via Zoom? But what do you want that experience to look like? For example, if they're meeting you at the office, here's my pet peeve when people meet at the office. If you have a doctor's appointment, you have an appointment at 9 a.m., you're on the calendar, you're on the books, they walk in and they're like, "Who are you?" Like, you have my information. Do you not know my name? Right? Instead, wouldn't it be amazing if when you walked in, they said, "Good afternoon, Alina. So glad you're here. I see you have an appointment at 9 o'clock. That's you, correct?" It's not like they have 50 people in their waiting room. Wouldn't that be an amazing experience if you were meeting with a real estate agent and when you walked into their office, the receptionist says, "Oh, you must be Mark. We're so happy you're here." Or what if you decided to take it a step further and you had a welcome sign at the front counter that said, "Welcome, Mark." People love to hear their name. We're selfish that way, right? And so how would that experience look like for you? Then what do you want that buyer or seller presentation to look like? How do you want that client to feel when they're sitting there with you? Do you have snacks available for them or drinks available for them? Do you have a booklet printed out for them so that they can have something to take away from the experience with you? Once they have met with you, what do you want that next experience to look like? Now that they've agreed to work with you, whether selling or buying, what happens next? What do you want to happen? Let's say you're planning on showing them property. Are you meeting them there? Or are you loading them into your car filled with McDonald's wrappers on the floor? What do you want that experience to look like? Some of these rules have changed a little bit with COVID. Some of them haven't, meaning, are we now meeting people at properties? Because of the market, many times we are. But what are you doing to prep them for viewing homes? How can you make that experience just a notch bigger? You guys, here's the sad thing about our industry. It's not that hard to stand out. Meaning you can do little things that make people feel extraordinary. Think about one of your favorite restaurants you've been to of all time. My personal favorite is called The Kitchen. Have any of you guys been to The Kitchen? Anybody on here? Oh, it's ridiculous. It's an experience. It's not just eating, it's an experience. First of all, when you walk in, They pretty much know who's going to be there that night, and they'll say, hey, you must be so, and you have a signed seat with a little name there. They literally will tell you, we have a planned menu tonight, but if you have an allergy or something you don't like, please let us know and we'll make arrangements for you. They seat everybody at the same time, so everybody gets the same experience. True story, my husband and I went there one time with a group of people, and my husband he's a picky eater, and he kept not eating some of the things that they were bringing for him. And finally the server says, sir, I'm just curious, are you not enjoying the food? Is there something we could change? He goes, oh no, I'm just trying to save room for ice cream at the end. Right? So sure enough, at the end of the night, instead of bringing him a single scoop like they brought to everybody else, they brought him 3 scoops of ice cream because they knew that he couldn't wait for the ice cream. He was anxious for dessert, right? So think about how that would have made you feel. You would have felt like, oh my gosh, the service here is incredible, right? How do you feel when you go to a nice restaurant and the owner comes up and he says, hey, I'm Dennis and I'm the owner here. I'm the head chef. I just want to make sure that you're having a great experience. Does that not make you feel special? So the starting belt to celebration day checklist is something that we want to make sure that every step, whenever possible, is making our clients feel extraordinary. Again, you guys, this is always a work in progress, right? So it's far from exactly what we're doing at all times, but we're always adding to it and always fixing it. Okay, so the next one is called a pending sale checklist, meaning now that your client is in contract, again, what do you want all of those things to look like? This is a simple checklist that we've created that we now use on a Trello board, and it makes sure that everything is handled. Think about things like this. Is there an HOA? Maybe you know, maybe you don't. Maybe you're a newer agent and you don't even know what an HOA is, right? Have you checked if there are CC&Rs, right? What are CC&Rs? These are all things that you can start to think about. What do you want that experience to look like? You can also see at the very end, after it closes does not mean we're done with them. After it closes means we want to make sure we're updating our database. We want to make sure we're removing the lockbox. We also want to make sure we're scheduling an annual review, which is a class that we talk about in another Tuesday tune-up. We also want to make sure that we're doing a home housewarming party if the client wants one, right? Sending out review requests, things like that. In addition, back on the starting belt of celebration day, which you guys can't really see at the very bottom, are 30, 60, 90 day and 1 year calls, right? These are all things that you want to really think about what you want that experience to look like. So now let's talk about a new hire checklist. You're thinking about hiring an assistant, right? And again, if you already have these previous checklists in place, great. If you don't, what can you actually do with a new employee? You can bring that staff person on and work with them to create a checklist. We'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. But number one, do you have a new employee checklist? Do you have a list of all the things that you want your staff to have happen? What do you need to train them on? What do you need to show them how to do? What do you need to make sure? The biggest mistake we make overall is we never train our staff. We expect them to go in and figure it out, which we do need people that can figure things out. But again, you're wanting to develop a checklist around what does it look like to bring that staff person on? What kind of training do we actually need to do with them? Another thing is, what does your realtor partner checklist look like? Meaning, are you bringing on a buyer's agent or someone? We're in the process of renovating this checklist for our team. But on here is what things are expected of you, right? What does your schedule look like? How are leads handled? How are appointments handled, right? How are contracts handled? How does escrow happen? What's going on with that? We're in the process of implementing many of these on our team. And like, how do you become a senior partner on the team? There's books that we like them to read in the perfect world. One of them is Who Moved My Cheese and Raving Fans. If you guys have not read those books, Both extraordinary, short, easy, quick. You can read them in a couple hour books, but they are fantastic books. Now let's talk a little bit about training. Training is the biggest mistake that agents make, and not literally training them properly to do the job you want done. So even me with extraordinary experience, 30 years in the business, if you hired me to come run your team or come help you on your team, am I going to know exactly what to do when I walk in the door? No, because you're going to have your own way of doing things, your own style, your own system. And what's really important is that you take the time to train them and show them what needs to be done. What does that look like? That means having a clear objective is extremely important to the success of your assistant. So taking that time up front to define their responsibilities and expectations and overall goals is vital. So I might come to you, for example, Isaac, and say, hey, I want to have this system in place. Awesome. Isaac, who wants to please and wants to be a great staff person or agent, says, great. I hand him all the stuff and he gets overwhelmed. He doesn't know what to do. He's a little lost. He's confused. I've taken off. He doesn't want to look bad. He doesn't want to embarrass himself. He doesn't want to be a bad employee, but he's clueless as to what needs to happen and what needs to be going on. So what's really important is I go to Isaac, I say, okay, Isaac, two things. Number one, here's the system that we want to implement. I would like you to take and draft it up and review it and see if there's anything you don't understand or are missing. The second part is helping people understand the why behind the what. Meaning, I will say, people, if you're on my team, many people have heard me say, here's the method behind my madness. Here's the reason why I do things. Just like I explained at the beginning of class today, the reason I create checklists is to create consistency so that the same thing happens every single time. So what is your why? Why is that staff person there? Why is that agent there? How do you want them to show up? How do you want them to behave? How do you want them to handle transactions, right? And so you want to really set some goals for your assistant. What is it exactly you want them to do? If you're not sure what you want an assistant to do, go back to my class called How to Delegate What You Hate and watch that one. Come up with a job description of the things that you don't want to do, right? And make sure that you're getting clear on what it is you want them to do. Do you want them making phone calls? If so, how many? Do you want them sending out mailers for you? Again, do you want that done per week, once a month? What's the process look like for that? Do they need your approval on it? Do they need to design it for you, right? And present you with a few different designs and ideas? Do you want them generating leads? And if so, what does that actually look like? Do you want to set long range goals and meet quarterly to evaluate? Now, I want to clear up a couple things with staff people. God does not put a great salesperson and a great manager in the same body. Okay, it's his cruel little thing in the world. There are some random unicorns that can do it, but 99% of the people out there are not. If they're great administrative, detailed, task-oriented people, they're usually not great salespeople. The other end of that is if they're great salespeople, they're not usually real detail-oriented, highly structured, consistent people. They're just not. So when you're thinking about who you're hiring, what are you actually hiring for? Are you hiring people to take all of the details, the transactional kind of minutia off your plate so you can go sell more? If so, that assistant is not going to be generating leads for you. They're not, right? They're not going to be somebody who's on the phone all day long trying to drum up business for you. That's your job, okay? If you're hiring somebody that's a buyer's agent or an ISA, an inside salesperson, that's going to be some different skill sets. Now, you guys, I've done the whole class on the DISC profile, and that's also available on YouTube and in my Tuesday tune-ups. But it is also the key to making sure that you're hiring right. The sad thing is that many of us don't hire right. We hire people we like, which are not always the best people for the actual job. Not saying you can't like the people that you work with, but what I'm saying is we have a tendency to hire people that are just like us. So if I go hire another person just like me, to be an assistant on my team, we're going to clash, right? They're not going to last. They're going to want to go and build their own team. So it's important that you think about, now, if I want somebody to run my team, absolutely. Nicole, who is our operations manager, has very similar skill set to me in a lot of ways. She has a few different things, but she has a lot of skill set. Heather, who's my sales manager, and again, ran my team for years and years, has the complete opposite profile than I do. She's a very steady as she goes. She's very consistent. She says the same thing every time. She follows a process. She's extraordinary in that way. But on the other hand, she's not a driver like me, right? So for me to take her and put her in my position would be a disservice to her and myself. Does that make sense? So keep in mind too, that the top 5 reasons that people stay with you actually have nothing to do with money. They want an exciting work. They want exciting work and a challenge. They want the opportunity for career growth, learning, and development. They want to work with great people. Of course, they would love to have fair pay, but if you notice, it's number 4 on the list. They want a supportive management, a great boss. Many times they also want benefits. People a lot of times will take benefits over a pay raise, meaning, is it an option for you to add a health insurance policy for your employee instead of giving them a big raise, right? I remember years ago when we were doing some goal setting with my staff, and I had 14 staff at the time. And again, I'm driven and wired very differently. So when I went to my staff and I said, what are your goals? If we hit this goal, what do you want to have happen? And I thought, oh, they don't want raises or a big bonus. One of them said, all I want is to be able to take my children to Disneyland. She had a child who had cerebral palsy. So for her to go to Disneyland was a much bigger deal than for some of us, because they couldn't fly, they had to drive, right? So it was going to cost more and be more time intensive. That was her goal. So guess what? That goal, we made it happen that year. And that's the thing that you want to think about. Remember, your goals are not other people's goals. So what does that look like? The next thing that's key is recording and documenting the training process. What does that look like? It means we literally do Zoom calls for just about all of our trainings. And we record it and we share our screen and we save it in our Google Drive under trainings so that they can go back and watch it over and over again. Look, no employee wants to keep coming to you and asking you over and over again how to do something. They're embarrassed, right? So many times they just won't even tell you that they don't know how to do it. If they have the opportunity to be actually trained step by step and be able to watch that recording several times, it can change the way that things are done, correct? So for example, this was a simple process of how to order a sign. Now you would think, well, that's not that complicated. They should be able to figure that out. Yes and no, right? We want to make sure that they actually know exactly what type of sign, where do we want the sign installed? What do we want on it? Do we want name writers? Do we not want name writers? What sign do we actually want on the call? These are all things that you got to think about. How do you actually take and document the training and review the process with everything you do? Now you're all thinking, I can already see your guys' eyes glazing over. For those of you who actually, I can see your face. You're thinking, how the heck do I get all this done? Literally, you're already doing most of it yourself. So what if you could simply record on Zoom? Now you guys have it easy. Back then we used to have to screenshot stuff. You could actually record a Zoom of you going into the MLS and setting up a client profile, or you actually going online and ordering inspections, or whatever those different trainings that you want somebody to do look like for you, right? And if you can document it one time and record it one time, then do you have to do it over and over again? No, you go, hey, Mark, go back and watch that recording again of how to install the sign. What I'd like to know is, did it actually work the way I explained it? If not, please come back to me so we can improve and update the system. So that's a way to really look at that. And so take each one of your first designer checklist, then take each of those items on the checklist And if you did this 15 minutes a day, you guys, meaning 15 minutes a day, you simply sat and recorded the process, you have an entire training manual available to yourself and to your staff. How different would that be? And those are things to really think about. The next thing is doing performance reviews. Everyone wants to know how they're doing, right? What does that look like? After hiring an assistant, you should really schedule formal reviews when you can, 30 days, 60, 90. Are they meeting deadlines? What's the quality of their work? What's the quantity of their work? Are they showing initiative? Meaning, are they stepping up and getting out of their box and finding ways? Again, when I go back and I reference AJ, he has been extraordinary. He's gone over the top. He's worked after hours. And I'm not saying people have to, but he's done it when he needed to. He's gone through and reviewed and revised systems and processes. He's come to me and said, hey, we have a problem in this area. How can we fix it? I have some ideas on things we could do to improve, right? But he didn't start out that way. He started out by not really knowing or understanding what was going on. And little by little, we worked together to create a system. And I have to tell you, my transaction management system right now on our team is pretty dialed. We still have some hiccups and things we have to correct. But now that we have that system in place, now we're working on how can we under promise and over deliver to our clients. We just spent Saturday, Sydney, who's on this call today, putting together moving day kits for our clients. While we were doing that, we figured out we made some mistakes, right? We're like, oh, we were working off of this checklist. Oh, we didn't have this. Oh, we didn't know that. So guess what? Back to the drawing board with the system so that we can revise it, update it, correct the mistakes that we made, make sure that doesn't happen again. I also went through the why we do moving day kits, right? To create consistency in our team, to create consistency for referrals. And I'm pretty sure we have a training on that. If not, I'll put together one soon. But the reality, that was a perfect example of a system that went a little bit awry. We had to go back and review the system and look at what happened. Why did it happen this way? How can we make sure it doesn't happen next time, right? The next thing to think about too is meeting regularly. Are you actually meeting regularly? Meaning, are you scheduling time each week, even if it's a 10-minute, 15-minute call to just go over? We on our team meet 3 times a week. We have 2 administrative meetings and 1 sales meeting, right? And that's just for the agents on our team. I also have a leadership meeting every week where we go through and we look at what do we need to work on and where do we need to improve. I have an administrative meeting as well with my staff to make sure that things are happening the way that they're supposed to. So are you meeting each week to go to review progress, wins, loses, right? Losses? Are you reviewing your systems? Are you getting feedback on how those systems can be improved? Are you making sure to keep them in the loop and including them in planning of projects they will be involved with, right? The big thing is, the elephant in the room is, are you even doing any of this? And if not, if you're overwhelmed and you're feeling lost, a couple things. Start with one simple checklist, one simple one. Maybe it's simply the buyer discussion checklist, which we again have available. Maybe it's a simple checklist of what do you want it to look like when they come and meet you at the office. Dream a bit, you guys. And here's another thing. I just did a great podcast with Christy Grossman. Okay. You guys can scan that if you want and go listen to that episode. And it was fantastic. Christy Grossman runs a program called Ops Boss, where she only trains and works with operations managers. She's extraordinary. I've known her for probably 15 years. And we had a great conversation about this. So I encourage you guys to go listen to that podcast with her. And I'd love to hear your comments and your feedback and your ideas and thoughts. So also we do have our Facebook group, Real Estate Success Strategies and Accountability. You guys can go check out at any time. You can scan that as well. Just so you guys know, this entire presentation today was put together and made by my virtual assistant, Mark, in the Philippines, who does an extraordinary job. He put this entire thing together. So this is the value, you guys. You know how much time it would have taken me to put that presentation together? Instead, I hire great people who can handle it for me so that I can look at the bottom line, because my highest and best time and use is in front of you face to face. Would you not agree? So this is the value of genuinely getting great people to help you and taking the time to train them. So if you want to connect with me, here's all the different ways you guys can connect with me. And thank you very much. Any questions?
That was amazing.
Thank you, Mark.
I definitely appreciate you addressing the elephant in the room, because that is how I feel. I'm just
Yeah.
like, holy cow, where do I start? How can I ever compete against someone like you?
It's not really, here's how you can compete. Number one, you're not competing with me, because the people who work with me are not going to work with you, and vice versa. Your only competition is yourself. And the better you get, because the thing is, when you build your business, which we've talked about, then you work with people who know you, like you, and trust you. And the people who know you, like you, and trust you are not going to work with me. But what you can do is you can start today by what is one simple process you would love to put in place that happens the same way every time. Are you meeting with clients face to face up front? If not, that's a simple process you can do, right? Maybe it's an experience of, what do you want the closing process to look like? Are you going to your signings? If you are, what do you want that experience to look like? Just think about all these different things that are happening throughout a real estate transaction, and how can you improve that experience? Just start with one. You guys, I didn't do all this overnight. You're looking at 30 years worth of business, right? 30 years of systems and processes.
And Marguerite, I appreciate everything you said. And also, it is such a truth. We're always only in competition with ourselves. We always think we're in competition with the other agents. The truth is, it's only the amount of business we can handle, and that the clients that appreciate the work that we do and all that stuff. And so, yeah, I'm not a systems oriented, but I know how important it is. And I started with a checklist, and actually I just finalized that with my transaction coordinator, and now I have that. So it's a step-by-step building process.
100%.
And I always joke, I said, if people really knew what a real estate agent, I said, being a full-time real estate agent is 3 full-time jobs.
So true. That is so true. And the thing is, you guys, what's most important is consistency. So let me just tell you one last thing, and we'll wrap up today. The whole thing around the moving day kits. Why did that even become a thing? It became a thing because, let's just say, Mark, that you refer me Eric, right? And you refer me Eric. And so I end up giving you a gift of $200 for referring him, or $25, whatever it is. So then guess what? You're telling Eric, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. I got $200 for referring you. And then Eric refers me somebody and I give him nothing. How do you think that feels? It's the same thing with closing gifts. Why we do moving day kits is to create consistency with every single client. Our moving day kits are just a bunch of stuff that people can't find when they're in the middle of moving, right? Things like toothbrushes and light bulbs and hammers and screwdrivers and junk like that. But it's consistent, meaning that if you work with me and I close a deal with you, Mark, guess what? I'm giving you a moving day kit. So when you refer Eric and Eric closes, he gets a moving day kit. What if, Mark, I did a deal with you and you bought a $300,000 home and I give you like a $50 bottle of wine or a $50 gift card? Then you refer me, Eric buys $1 million home and I go give him this huge elaborate thing with all this stuff. And you're like, wow, I got $50 and you got $1,000, right? The consumer doesn't think my sale was only 300 and his was $1 million, so I should give him more. They don't think about that. Or do you now, since you only bought a $300,000 home, feel less than Eric? I don't ever want somebody to feel less than someone else. I don't want them to feel any less important. I don't care if they buy a $30,000 mobile home to a $5 million Lakeview home. I want that $30,000 person to feel just as important as the $5 million one, always. So that's my thought process when I'm going through that. Does that make sense?
Wow. So you give them the same gift despite your profit margin?
Mm-hmm. Moving day kits. Now, sometimes we'll throw some extra stuff in there. I might put an extra bottle of wine, or I might do some, depending on the person, right? But it depends. Some people have kids. I put kids stuff in there. Some people have dogs. I give them pet stuff. It's just little, but it's a big moving day kit with all the stuff that they can't find when they're moving. Because isn't that a universal problem?
Mhm.
Even if he's buying a $5 million home and he's hired movers, I guarantee you the first night you get there, he can't find his toothbrush. He's, damn it, it's in one of the boxes that we haven't unpacked yet. So it's a universal problem. So it doesn't have to be moving day kits. It can be whatever you want, but it's consistent to me. Because here's the thing, I'm not rewarding him for my profit margin. I'm rewarding him for being a client. I'm thanking him for being a client, not thanking him because I made extra money on his deal.
Got it.
All right, you guys, any other questions?
Thank you, Marguerite. Appreciate you. And I'm looking forward to getting your checklist when that comes out.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Have an amazing day.
Marguerite. Bye.